Ian Robertson, high school basketball star. Betty Crane, housewife, mother, and a mighty fine cook. Thomas P. Galloway, 71 last birthday, and tells everybody he's really 65. 3 people, unacquainted, with only one thing in common. In a few hours, each of them is going to be hospitalized, but none of them knows it.
Dad, dinner.
In each case, whether tragedy enters the home or not may depend on a simple detail. The patient who comes to the emergency entrance of a modern hospital is seldom interested in the details of his arrival. Tom Galloway is no exception. 20 minutes have passed since he suffered a coronary thrombosis. How serious? We don't know yet. That's the reason for the physical examination. Oxygen to help breathing. A drug intravenously to stimulate circulation. Records later. First, the bare facts. How bad is it? How can he be kept alive? "21 minutes. As yet, they don't even know his name. But the medical team and the machinery of the hospital have set in activities that will bring Galloway back to health. If he's lucky. And the odds are that Tom Galloway will be lucky. That's not his real name, of course. He's simply representative of the thousands of people who all year round enter the hospitals of Ontario at the rate of 1 every 40 seconds. A total of more than 800,000 adults and children requiring hospital treatment and care. When you consider the number of patients and the highly developed state of medical science today, it's not surprising that caring for these people can be a very complicated job, calling for the combined efforts of a highly diversified hospital team. For instance, let's consider the number of resources that have answered Tom Galloway's call in just the last 22 minutes. Emergency room crew, oxygen equipment, and drugs, and of course the great number of resources not yet called for, but standing by ready for use. Before he leaves, Tom Galloway will have had the benefit of many of these services. How much will they cost him? Well, to a large extent, that depends on Mr. Galloway himself. With Ontario Hospital Insurance, Tom Galloway and other patients may have all of the regular and usual hospital services paid for by the hospital plan just as long as they are medically necessary to their treatment. This includes not only standard ward accommodation and meals, but all nursing services provided by the hospital, drugs, biologicals, and related preparations prescribed by the attending physician. Laboratory, X-ray, and other diagnostic procedures. Radiotherapy, where available and required. physiotherapy facilities. Use of operating room, case room, and anesthetic facilities, including the necessary equipment and supplies. In all, a long and detailed list, and a pretty reassuring list for a man of 71 with a heart condition. In this case, there's only one thing wrong. Tom Galloway has never taken out hospital insurance. Useless. Instead of doing the very job it was designed for. How did it happen? Tom Galloway's not a stupid man, and he's not what you'd call a pauper. Practically every citizen of this province is insured, but not Tom Galloway. Why? Why? Why?
I hear you folks right now. You're liable to break some windows. Go on, get away from me. Go on, come on. Come on, in the house.
Oh, Eddie, slow down.
Eddie, that's no way to come to the table now.
By the way, Dad, your pension check came today.
That's impossible. Anybody knows the government doesn't start giving you money before you're 70. And I've told you a dozen times I'm 65.
That's mighty old.
Son.
Old enough to run my own affairs.
And old enough to take out hospital insurance, which you constantly refuse to do.
You're not going to start that again.
But we've all got that kind of insurance these days, Dad. Not as though you couldn't afford it.
Afford it? John, I'm going to tell you something. I started life on a farm, as well you know. 12, 16 hours of work a day, and mighty hard work it was. Come close to 50 years. 50 years, man and boy. And never a day of sickness in my life. Well, it's true. When you and Mary asked me to come and live with you in the city, and you admitted that you'd let me help with the chores, I said, fine. Healthy I've lived in the country, I said, and healthy I'll live in the city. And here I am.
And here we're glad to have you.
But I'm only talking about reasonable precautions.
Reasonable Now, look, let me put it to you this way. Like one of those lawyers would say. What is reasonable about betting against myself? Yes, betting against myself. That's what I'd be doing with that hospital insurance. Paying out money every month. Why, I'd have to take sick to make it worth my while. I've never been sick a day in my life.
Man and boy.
Yes, man and boy. This looks like mighty fine meat, Mary. Health? I'll treat you to a turkey dinner on my 95th birthday. And seeing that's a good 30 years away, just to show my good faith, I'm going to shovel the walk this very afternoon.
Now, Dad.
Yes. Well, the fresh air do me good.
30 minutes after entering hospital, Tom Galloway needed more than fresh air. Auricular fibrillation, a dangerous, weak, irregular beating of the heart, made a further intravenous injection necessary. This time, he went into an oxygen tent. The doctor instructed a nurse to stand by until further notice. The team that would pull Tom Galloway through was growing in size. As new resources were needed, they were there. But they cost money. And now they would come out of the modest savings of a stubborn old gentleman who never had a sick day in his life, man and boy. Sound pretty foolish? Oh, maybe. Wouldn't happen to you that way? You know, that's what George Crane said. And he was quite right, of course. It didn't happen to him that way. It happened in an entirely different way.
Yes, sir. 6 years old today. And what a character.
The other day I asked him why in the world he wanted to be a fireman. You know what he says? He says, well, gee, Dad, it's been my main interest for the past 6 years. Main interest for the past 6 years. Man alive. What a character. Here, I'll help you with that.
Oh, that's okay, George. You can build the office, eh?
Fine.
Oh, by the way, when's the new job start?
Couple of weeks?
Man, sometimes I think you should stay right here. You got it made. A setup like this and right in your own home. Oh, that's okay, George. I can find my way out.
Fine.
In some ways, George Crane does have it made. A few short months ago, when he was temporarily laid off from an electrical contracting firm, he applied to several other companies and filled in by doing repair work in his own home. A good craftsman, he was soon making fairly good money. When the company asked him back, he was doing so well on his own that he waited. Yesterday it came. The offer of a steady job with a bigger firm. The price was right, and he starts in 2 weeks.
Dear Martin, happy birthday to you.
What do you mean you don't know happy birthday? That's it.
I didn't think I did. And that's what we sing when the cake comes in?
That's right. I'll turn all the lights out in the dining room, and then I'll come out here and I'll light the candles. And when I take the cake into the dining room, we'll all sing happy birthday. Oh, Marty, you remember.
Why do we turn the lights out in the dining room?
Marty, you'd think that you never had a birthday before. You know perfectly well why we turn the lights out in the dining room. We turn them out so that the candles on the cake will show up better in the dark. That's why.
Why do we blow the candles?
Betty!
Easy now. Just take it easy. That's better. You'll be all right.
The boy wasn't as badly burned as his mother. Betty entered hospital with third-degree burns to hands and arms, and in shock. George was distraught. It took a moment to calm him down, so he could provide the proper information for their admission.
Okay, Doc.
Have you your hospital insurance certificate with you, Mr. Crane?
Sure, I usually have it here in my wallet. Oh, here it is.
Thank you.
Oh, here's a piece of paper they gave me before I left the company. Do you need it?
Yes, this is your certificate of payment. According to this, Mr. Crane, your insurance lapsed over a month ago.
But that's not possible. I'm prepaid through the company.
That's true, for 3 months. But you've been self-employed for over 4 months.
Now, look here, miss. I've been a steady contributor to this all along.
You see, Mr. Crane, I can...
My wife and son are in there burned, and they need help right now. And here you are arguing about a few dates on a piece of paper.
I'm not arguing, Mr. Crane. Since your insurance has lapsed, I must note on this form that the hospital bill be sent to you instead of to the hospital services.
There must be some mistake. This is only a simple detail.
He was perfectly right, of course. It was just a simple detail. But now it was one that would cost him close to $1,000, just because he had not followed the simple instructions on the hospital insurance certificate of payment he received when he left his job. He had a prepaid period of 3 months in which to make a premium payment. He didn't do it. Why? It wasn't a question of money with George. He simply kept putting it off. Oh, he intended to take care of his simple detail, but he just left it too long. Every day, details like this become more and more important in our modern, bustling way of life. Few of us like them. None of us can afford to ignore them. And it isn't just that our hospitals have more patients and more and better equipment. Our hospital system is part of our overall way of life. A way of life that is faster, more complicated, more dependent on the machine than ever before. Communications are only one aspect of life which reflect how dependent we are on a highly developed technology. A modern city has to do mountains of accounting, research, and investigation. The vital job of saving lives and maintaining health has had to take on many of the chores of big business. And in a hospital, detailed, accurate records can be a matter of life and death. The need for research has mushroomed, and research means a vast body of information. Our hospitals have to keep track of hundreds of incoming and outgoing patients as part of their daily work. Make accurate inventories. Identify and provide care for some 150,000 new babies every year in this province alone. It has its dramatic moments, and these are what the general public hears about. But behind the scenes, it's a job made up of 1,000 details. This is simply a fact of life. No matter how good our equipment, we still have to depend on people to look after many of these details. For instance, there's no mechanical substitute for what hospitals call TLC, tender, loving care. There aren't many people who make George's mistake these days. 93% of the people of Ontario have Ontario hospital insurance. And nearly all of them are extremely conscientious, not only about premium payments, but about the simple details. And this is important, because safeguarding your personal affairs isn't something you can delegate to others. Nobody does? Well, what would you say about the Robertson story? Ian Robertson, age 19 and a half years. Diagnosis, acute appendicitis, possible rupture. To Ian, being knocked out of the game is a major disappointment. But he's healthy, always has been, and his parents have hospital insurance covering the family. Use of operating room, case room, anesthetic facilities, routine surgical supplies, accommodation and meals during hospitalization, all are covered by the plan. Anesthetist, surgeon, and the family doctor, of course, will render their own accounts. But all the necessary hospital services are covered by Ontario Hospital Insurance. For more than 5.5 million people in Ontario, this small certificate can be a real ace in the hole. For Ian Robertson, there's only one snag. His insurance is no longer in force. Ian turned 19 about 6 months ago. Until that time, as a dependent, he was covered by his father's insurance. Now, what his father forgot was that dependent children cease to be covered by the family premium when they reach age 19. Ian should have been registered on his own when he turned 19. A simple detail. But it's going to be costly. Because no matter who pays for it, every patient requires the same meticulous care, the same quality of hospital service. We've shown you just 3 cases, each of them an exception to the rule. Actually, very few residents of Ontario who go to hospital are uninsured. Most people take care of the simple details, which must be their own responsibility if they're to prevent financial catastrophe arising out of serious hospital expense. But there's much more than money involved. Take a look at the average Ontario city, and I think you'll see what I mean. It's more than a matter of dollars, of numbers of nurses, doctors, and hospital beds. Across the province, in urban and rural areas, the Ontario Hospital Services Commission is assisting in the development of a balanced and integrated system of hospitals. This means making sure that we have the right hospital facilities and personnel in the right place at the right time. It means study of the requirements of hospital beds and facilities. It means careful planning of new hospitals. It means administration of capital grants for support of hospital construction. These grants are made available by the federal and provincial governments. It means continued and detailed research into all factors which enter into the provision of hospital care, for only by knowing all the facts is it possible to determine the present and future needs of hospitals. And when the needs are known, proper planning can be undertaken to meet these needs. And we felt that once we showed you the scope of the Commission's responsibilities in serving the people of Ontario, you'd understand a little better why the Commission must depend on you to take care of certain simple but important details. To remember, for instance, to pay your Ontario hospital insurance premiums when they are due. This protects your prepaid cushion, which could be a real blessing to you in time of unforeseen difficulty. If you stop paying premiums through an insured group, be sure to obtain a certificate of payment. It's often known as Form 104. And follow carefully the simple instructions on the back of this form. Present your hospital insurance certificate to the hospital when you or any of your dependents are admitted. It's always a good idea to have a separate record of your hospital insurance number where it can be readily found in times of emergency. Be sure to tell your employer or collector within 30 days of any change in marital status. And if you don't pay your premiums through a group, then you should advise the Commission directly. Finally, take out separate insurance for a dependent when he or she reaches age 19. Oh, and by the way, always quote your hospital insurance number when you write or phone the Commission.
When you come to think of it, my own son-in-law taking out hospital insurance for me and never a word. As if I was a child. Destroys a man's independence.
Dad, admit you're glad of it.
Glad? I resent it. Why couldn't you tell me?
Dad, you'd have raised the roof. You wouldn't do it yourself, and we'd never heard the end of it.
He didn't even tell me. Anyway, it all happened 3 months ago, and you weren't bothered about it till now.
More than 3 months ago, and a good thing, too, or this bill wouldn't have been covered.
Mary, I told you before, when that young man come to court you, Mary, I said, he's got a sneaky look. That's what I said. He's got a sneaky look. Well, I'll try to get used to it.
No, our stories didn't end in tragedy. But they could have. And maybe there's a lesson for us in what might have been.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Martin. Happy birthday to you.
There, what do you think of that?
How's that?
It's a nice cake.
Well,
You have
make
to
a big
blow all the
wish now.
candles out. Come on, make
Then
a wish.
take a big breath.
All together. Oh!
It's good to be back all under our own roof again. But I guess that's one experience I won't forget.
The college championship will have to be played without Ian Robertson. As for Grandpa Galloway,
Dad?
Yeah?
Just because I thought.
What's the matter now?
What did the doctor say?
Oh,
When
doctors.
you go out, you do your scarf
Yes,
up
I know.
and your coat.
All right. Stop
You want to be
fussing,
back in
will
the
you?
hospital again?
No. Now, you all through?
Yes, and have a
Yeah,
real
yeah.
good time.
Yeah, goodbye.
Well, you know, I don't think he'll ever really change. Still as independent as ever. So we have to do the best we can. But you know, it's kind of nice just having him around.